of the whole conversation, but rather some important highlights. And I want to start with leg. Do we have, is Jolyn? Oh, it's Gabriel, right. So Gabriel, and then Jean-Paul, are you still in the room? Oh, good. Do you want to come up and sit at the front, please? And then you can be part of the panel, and then we can move through. You can sit next to Gabriel there. And Alice, do you want to come up too? And perfect. And Alejandro will be speaking for the PCCB session. Okay. And with that, I'll pass it over to you, Gabriel. If you could just share some of your reflections on, just in general, first of all, about how it was to meet in this way, and then a little bit about some of the highlights that emerged for you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think, firstly, as a leg member, we're happy for this event, and because at least we had a kind of a face-to-face discussion around our tools, and also we had to gather some, at least, feedback, at least to see what we can do going forward. So, in our sessions, I think the things that we really try to focus on is like how the tools, the P-aligned tool by the leg, should be applied more efficiently, and of which within the members, we start up with a kind of a quick feedback and then reflections on the presentations. And of course, we try just in a quick bullet to present to them the P-aligned tools. And then also, we for the feedback, one thing that came out clearly is the accessibility of the tools to the public. Of course, as was mentioned during the presentation that we've made to webinar, and of course with new negotiators and others. So what came out clearly is that there is need for us to increase the frequency of this training or webinar, at least so that the LDC countries can be more aware about the tools and then how they could use it so efficiently. So in doing so, I think one thing we're going to do is, one is to contact focal points from LDC countries so that at least they can have a multi-stakeholder involvement in most of these trainings, I think, going forward. And another one is the stand clearly is raising awareness of the tools. And I must confess that there is need for us to broaden the level of awareness around this tool within the LDC group. So thus, I think going forward is one stand clear is we need to advertise the tool to wider stakeholders, not only the LDC group, but also to even some organizations, because sometimes maybe some organizations want to provide support to LDC countries. So if you see the different obligations, what they're supposed to do, maybe they could provide support in those areas. And then with that, I think what we're going to do is maybe doing our workshops, because we normally provide support to the LDC country to writing workshop. We also make sure that we present these tools to them, and also maybe trying to contact a kind of the focal points for nomination of series of members. And I think for us to include that in one of our series of work plan for our leg within. And I think fast forward in the last one, I think has to do with because around the discussion was how impactful the tool has been, basically. And it's kind of difficult to quantify that in numbers, but honestly, we'll tell you that there had been at least some concrete reflection around this, because that increased the awareness and then understanding of the Paris Agreement and the convention by negotiators. I think from the two, of course, webinar that we had, at least we can guarantee that for the refresher people, for those that are just refreshing the negotiation, they can take 2.5 hours to complete their training, while for the new ones, they can take a kind of a long time to complete 8 hours. And then finally, I think it's just as a way forward from our end, from all the discussion. The leg members, I think we intend to organize this tool in a kind of an online tool to be user-friendly. That is people can interact with the tool, go through a series of presentation, be it a video, just like you have the Coursera course, and then maybe they can answer some questions that follow, at least to see how impactful it will be. So I think in a summary, basically, at least the reflection, these are the reflection we get from, I think, our own group. And we're happy from the layer group, at least, in making sure that we work along the strengthening the awareness and then in other programs. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gabriel. Jean-Paul, could you please share, give us a flavor of what happened in your group?
Our group, we are looking into the relations of NGOs in the nationally determined contributions. We believe as NGOs, we work with the people, and any policy issues must start with the engagement of the people rather than government, because we know we elect our governments, and most of the policies that comes, our government fails to actually engage the young, the women who are excluded into policy processes. So civil society role in the NDC must be very pivotal. Secondly, we believe there is need for UNFCCC to have a civil society monitoring on the NDCs across the world, because we believe our government normally don't go by what they say at international conferences. If there is a subsidiary wing which will constitute the NGOs to do a country-led reporting system as to how government's priorities are implemented at the national level, that will be very good. We believe there is capacity gap in terms of thematic issues that will stem out as priorities of governments. And because of that, there is need for NGOs capacity building in terms of training, research, and awareness raising, so that we build a consensus among NGOs to be able to capture government priorities and then put it into a framework. Of course, there is need for networking and information dissemination among NGOs at country level, more so on thematic issues, because we think government priorities are stemmed out of priority areas. And those areas, civil society that do engage in those areas, they need to be capacitated so that they know the issues. (2025) is just around the corner, so there is need to start now in terms of civil society engagement on the NDCs, taking into consideration research, awareness raising, and capacity building, because this will go in tandem with what government does at the national level. So civil society also need to do that. Of course, capacity building will form the hub, out of which the UNFCCC capacity building wing will be very necessary to working with focal points on NGCs across the world, not only Africa, because we are hoping to establish a civil society wing on NDC in Sierra Leone. So we're hoping that other NGC wing in Africa and the world at large for civil society engagement on the NDC will be very key. Lastly, we believe the UNFCCC gives support to government, and ultimately, we think NGOs that are working on the review and updating of the NDC, they too should have a budget, so that, there will not be any foul play, because government have the resources. Civil society also must have resources on the NDC's engagement.
Thank you, Jean-Paul. And also thank you for taking a risk and putting your hand up. It's doing things differently, and I want to thank you for participating in this way. Alice, this adaptation committee session did not want to end, so please tell us about it.
It's okay now because we've just shared our email addresses and our telephone numbers, so we've already been family forever. So that was so interesting. And we talked about NGOs and civil society organizations a lot as well as indigenous people. So we talked a lot about local adaptation and the importance of communicating to people, especially at local level, and empowering people. And sometimes the national adaptations plans are not that suitable for local and perhaps especially indigenous people. And then we heard several examples of the Baka people of Cameroon. They understand what's happening with the climate because they live of nature and they live along with nature, and they see that things are changing, and it is important to communicate with those and to build a capacity and together find ways to adapt if possible, and that civil society organizations are often most suitable to do that because they know the communities. And they have sister organizations across the country, so they can share experiences and sort of multiply the efforts. And also they have cooperation both internationally, but also in neighboring countries. And also that these organizations learn from indigenous people because they are the guardians of nature. What more? We heard about several projects, Project Agroecology, and that the local communities, they trust civil society organizations because they know that they are there in their community. So it is very important to build capacity of civil society organizations, and then coming back to where we started with the adaptation communications that countries are submitting to the UNFCCC either through the national communications or NDCs or whatever. But these kind of local cooperation and initiatives and adaptation that is taking place might not be captured in those national adaptation communications. So we were talking about, okay, let's find some work for the adaptation committee. Sort of how is there something we can do to capture this? Can we do some kind of special reports so that, because the objective of the adaptation communications is to communicate needs that countries have, but also to communicate experiences and lessons learned so that we can share and get inspired by each other. So what can we do? So we have taken very good note, the Secretariat and me, so what can we do to make sure that these kind of experiences that might not be captured in the national adaptation communication can be used so that others can learn and be inspired. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you. And you're getting clapping from your conversation mates, so I take that as a thumbs up. Alejandro, do you want to speak about what happened in the PCCB conversation?
Thank you so much, Christine. And on behalf of Roberta from the PCCB, she had to leave briefly, but I'm happy to provide a bit of a quick summary of the discussions we had on the PCCB's group. Maybe first to answer one of your questions, Christine, in terms of the modality and how it worked, I think it worked very well. I would label it as an opportunity for learning, but also for sharing information. Because, for example, and that's something that also Gabriel mentioned in terms of the level of awareness of the PCCB toolkit, for example, a lot of the participants were not aware of the existence of this toolkit, and let's be honest. So, and I think that's a very important finding. But they did recognize that there was this enthusiasm about knowing more about it and how it could be applied to their circumstances. So it's a very important point we take back with us in terms of how to better disseminate these tools. And how it can trickle down, because there was discussions about maybe the focal points of the convention know about the toolkit, or they are aware about the work of the PCCB, but we had representatives from local governments, from civil society organizations that said, well, we're not aware. So maybe there's a role for increased outreach through the focal point system so that this trickles down to the local and national level. That's on the one hand, but also using better existing outreach channels, for example, social media that we have in the PCCB, or the PCCB network, which has been mentioned a lot here, how the PCCB network itself can be a channel or a vehicle for disseminating these products, and also beefing up the products, because we also discussed about the importance of continue extracting these case studies, this lesson learned, to feed into the toolkit and its resources. And that was also a discussion that the importance of ensuring that there is a mechanism for capturing these lessons learned, these case studies, what worked, but also what didn't work. For example, and the importance of having a mechanism like the toolkit that can retrieve these from the hidden boxes where these projects sometimes are, because these are project-based examples that maybe are published by the sponsor or the donor, but they remain in a very small circle. So the importance of someone being able to do the exercise of extracting these and putting them in instruments like a toolkit, like the PCCB's toolkits or other toolkits. Also, the importance of looking at the exchange of experience and how these spaces can be very useful for that. Just to give an example, I saw at the end of the discussion people coming up to each other, exchanging cards, talking more to each other. That in itself, I think, is very good, no? Because that's what these spaces provide. There was a lot of mention about specific thematics that the PCB could look more into its toolkit or next versions of it. For example, resources on capacity building for accessing finance. Again, either a subset of a toolkit, not to duplicate what's already there, because there's a lot of accessing finance, but maybe also to compile, retrieve case practices, studies, how it has been done for the GCF or other sources of funding. That was one aspect. Agriculture, nature-based solution was a topic that participants raised, the importance of having more information about how to enhance capacities there. Also, I think the issue of indigenous knowledge came up very, very prominently, how to enhance these needs. Also, academia, how can academia be supported? And I think that's a very important point in assessing and understanding capacity needs and gaps, and how we have been a lot of discussions within the PCB about the role of academia to ensure also country ownership and retention of capacities. The issue of country ownership came out prominently as well. And maybe just to finally mention that participants were eager to know more about these tools and to exchange with others, and see the toolkit, the PCCB toolkit, as an instrument that can really help their efforts, and also this exchange of experience. So I will stop here, but it's very similar conversations to the ones we heard from Gabriel and Alice on particularly the outreach dissemination. So I think very important lessons learned there for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Alejandro. Can we just have a round of applause for these partners? And for all the partners through the day, it looks just like people come and they just say a few words and then they host a group, and how hard can that be? Well, it is hard because it's identifying those people. We had many conversations to get ready, and then through this week, despite the bad Wi-Fi, trying to connect. So it's a real feat. And so thank you for all the effort that you have done, and all the partners throughout the day. Karina, you know who you are. And when I say we were meeting with the partners, I'm referring to me and my invisible partner who you don't see here, who is Greg Walker. Greg Walker is also of Mediators Beyond Borders, a professor at Oregon State University. Greg has been at every PCB meeting since the beginning. He loves the PCCB and considers many of its members personal friends now, as well as he's deeply committed to the planet getting better at handling conflict, and that's a huge capacity that he has been a steady advocate for. Unfortunately, Greg is ill. He's in his hotel room. He's fine, but he couldn't be with us today. He didn't want to spread any germs. So I just wanted to give him a shout out. Now, in terms of, I really enjoyed the comments today because they very much align with my own observations. And I want to commend the PCCB for doing this very innovative thing. As far as we know, this is the first time that open space has been used within the UNFCCC context and dialogues, and it's our hope that it gets used more for the very reasons we've heard at the end of this panel and other panels earlier today. And that is, it builds connection and catalyzes action more than hearing a bunch of great ideas and then talking about it. There is something about a personal conversation and the links that get built, and then you find people with similar interests, and all of a sudden things get created, and then things start to change in that direction of people with a shared interest. So again, thank you to the PCCB for inviting Mediators Beyond Borders International to be the lead partner. We thoroughly enjoyed the day. And I am saying we, Greg is watching from his hotel room, but Ruta and Jesse are colleagues from the International Climate Education Association. International Environmental Communications Association, no climate, environmental, that's right, have been welcoming people. Maybe you yourself are sitting here now because you had a conversation with one of these lovely women. So thank you very much for that. Now I'm going to pass things back to Alejandro for some upcoming news about the Hub. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christine. And yes, we wish Greg a speedy recovery. And he's a great fan and a great contributor to the PCCB, as long as with all the partners of this day. So our best wishes to him. So yeah, I have the task of wrapping up this day. So again, good evening, everyone. I hope everyone has had a good experience, participated in the discussions of the fourth day of the Capacity Building Hub. As you mentioned, we tried out a new modality for the Capacity Building Hub, the open space learning. Very happy. I think it turned out very well, and I think we'll be doing more of it in future hubs, and looking forward to engaging with our current and future partners. Today's open space really allowed for a wide variety of topics focused on capacity building to be covered. We heard during block one, we looked at people and media. Participants discussed two themes. Firstly, learning design from the front lines, which includes learning from people who are experiencing the worst parts of climate change and building capacities to connect existing solutions with the people who need support. The second theme of this blog was on young climate reporters, looking at the responsibility of journalists in order to promote accurate media coverage without scaremongering their audiences, and as well as the need to build capacities for climate activists in media training. Block 2 looked at sustainable cities, looking at energy systems and transformative coalitions in cities for sustainable capacity building. And very encouraging to see that the outcomes of these discussions raised a variety of themes ranging from capacity building needs for project development pipelines to construction safety and improving existing projects. Participants also discussed a virtual capacity building platform, which I found extremely interesting, for carbon neutral energy systems in cities. These discussions indeed highlighted a general anxiety of change in society, where people are afraid of change because they cannot envisage what the future could look like. Something to really consider about this climate change paralysis, something sometimes we see. The third and final block looked at capacity building tools and applications for implementing the Paris Agreement, the one we just concluded. I think we got very good insights that were just summarized a couple of moments ago. Some promotional aspects. So on the PCCB and its networks, I want to really quickly recall what the Paris Committee on Capacity Building is and does. The committee was established at COP21 in 2015 and seeks to address current and emerging capacity gaps and needs in implementing and further enhancing capacity building in developing countries. To support this mission, the PCCB launched the PCCB network in 2020 as a voluntary association of interested stakeholders engaged in climate-related capacity building. The network now has over 300 participants, and if you're interested in joining, please just scan the QR code you will see in the banner there at the entrance of the room. And also a major product, as you know, is the Capacity Building Hub. This Capacity Building Hub, which regularly it takes place as a mandated event, an event mandated by parties, takes place every year at COP, this being the fourth installment. And we were very happy to see it become a real open space for exchange and interaction on capacity building. So if you want to learn more about both the PCCB network and the hub, please go to the banners and you can scan the QR codes and you'll have more information. So on that sense, I mean, we already heard a very nice overview of the outcomes by Christine. I don't know if you want to go dwell into more details or we should just provide. Okay. Thank you. So you provide indeed a great recap from your perspective. What's happening next? Today is a day off for everyone, but we will continue on Monday on the Capacity Building Hub into the second week with the Capacity Building Day on Oceans and Land, supported by our lead partner, IUCN, and then the fifth day to take place on Tuesday, which will focus on nature-based solution, something that has been discussed extensively today, so you're more than invited to join these two very important days, Oceans and Land Day and Nature-Based Solution. And yeah, just to conclude, once again, I'd like to thank today's lead organizer, Mediators Beyond Borders International. Thank you very much for your guidance and your very enthusiastic handling of the day. Really appreciate it. Again, thank you all for your great participation and the fruitful outcomes, and with this, I declare closed this fourth day of the Capacity Building Hub. Thank you very much. And we will be continuing with another reception here, so if please, if you can leave the room as soon as you can, so we can start the next event. Thank you very much.